Well, here it is. We have actually finally seen Hokazono get attacked by the weekly release curse. And while it is very sad, it's definitely something that I want to highlight, that it doesn't seem like Hokazono wanted to compromise this chapter in really any way, shape, or form. Plenty of other series may have just created a shortened chapter, or may have been like, I'm not going to be able to finish this, because obviously a lot of his time went into creating the amazing color page that we also got for this chapter. But instead of, cranking out a 15-page chapter that might have been a little lackluster, we got the full intentional 22 pages or so of what Hokazono planned to have released, and some of the pages just, aren't really finished. But you can still tell clearly what is going on, and the story of Kagurabachi is moving along like a fast-paced truck. Very much so, because in this chapter alone, not only do we find out why the leader of the Kamunabi betrayed basically everyone and the country in hopes that the new user of the Shinichi would be a benevolent ruler that would be able to basically connect and absorb all of the major sorcery clans scattered throughout the country under one roof, under one power, which will make their country one of the strongest countries of all time, which is just nationalism and militarism, doing the best for your country and doing everything you can. Everyone needs to be working under the same conglomerate, under the same goal, instead of having individual sorcery clans that are all doing their own thing. Whether you can argue, there's benefits and downsides to each, because as the leader of the Kamunabi even says, when we first came together as the Kamunabi, we were a strong group of sorcerers. But now that we are all separated and scattered into different clans and different traditions and organizations, while sure you can say, the Kamunabi is still the one major, ruler, at the end of the day, all of those clans are going to follow their own wants, their own needs, and what they believe before they trust in the Kamunabi. That leads to things like the Rakuzachi, because even though the Rakuzachi was clearly illegal and clearly an underground area where the worst of things, even humans, were trafficked and put together, what actually proved the Kamunabi's weakness is that they were unable to stop it. You can also argue that the Kamunabi kind of just let the Rakuzachi slide just because they didn't want to deal with the issue, and also sometimes you can see they were able to use it towards their benefit when they tried to get the Shinichi through auction. There's definitely different ways to look at that. Ichiki, one of the other higher ups, one of the main three people that was in charge of stealing the Shinichi, doesn't agree whatsoever and says they already had this conversation a long time ago when the Seitei War first began. This idea of bringing the entire country together under one strong, powerful sword bearer, and rightfully believes that, hey, look, the problem isn't the Sword Saint. The problem is the sword. Because the leader foolishly believes that if they just kill the Sword Saint and entrust everything to Yora, who again does seem to be that's his complete and full want and desire here, because even towards the end of the chapter he says he's going to come for the Sword Saint and kill him completely. So they are not whatsoever working together, actually. Even if Yora and the Sword Saint's brains are kind of connected in some way, shape, or form through the Shinichi's power, it seems very clear that Yora is an enemy of the Sword Saint. So that throws a whole wrench in everything that's been going on, because now we have a full outright reasoning for the Hoshaku existing, why they were able to infiltrate the Kamunabi headquarters as well as they did, because literally the main leader of the Kamunabi was sympathetic to their cause. He really believes that if they can stop everyone from getting in the way of Yora getting the Shinichi and wielding its full power, they can just use the malediction not to hurt the country, but to spread the malediction out and use it as almost as if it's like a threat of power. This video is sponsored by GamerSupps, the ultimate energy and focus formula. Use my code NOOP now for 10% off, and thank you GamerSupps for sponsoring the channel. It's very clear that if Yora is actually able to acquire the Shinichi, things could go very badly very quickly. Because if this is what the Hoshaku is willing to do to get the sword, there's no telling what they'll do when they're in power, let alone what could happen if, as Ichiki, and honestly, I believe, if the Shinichi is able to possess Yora. Because we have to remember, with the true realm of enchanted blades, with Rokuhira creating these weapons that expanded and evolved way past what he could ever possibly believe was possible, there has always been this subtle remark that through the True Realm, through synchronization with one's enchanted blade, the enchanted blade begins to reveal the desires of the wielder. They become one together. So whether you want to argue that the problem was the Sword Saint or the Shinichi, or the Sword Saint's desires are what influenced the Shinichi to create the malediction, or the Shinichi was always a toxic, evil, dark weapon that was going to give birth to the malediction, whether the Sword Saint was the wielder or not, I think everything is kind of foobar, in my honest opinion. I think we should just destroy it all. There's no point. The enchanted blades are completely a problem and they all need to be eradicated. The world does not need crazy weapons like this, because even if you want to say the leader of the Kamunabi was right to bring all of Japan under one roof, under the Kamunabi's power, that can lead to no good, even if Yora is in full control of the power, because then you're just threatening other nations with that power. Absolute power always corrupts. So I think they are definitely wrong in what they're doing here, but who knows what's going to happen, because clearly the Sword Saint has their own wants and what they plan to do in the future. They do seem somewhat aware of what's going on right now, and this may be their chance to break out. However, with the reveal of Yora's true intentions, it seems like he's on his own grind, and I don't know what that would be. Again, clearly him and Yora having a connection through the Shinichi may be leading him to kind of know what's going on. At this point, this has thrown a whole entire loop in what we thought the plot was developing as. This honestly can go so many different ways and bring the end of this Kamunabi raid in a way that I don't think anybody's going to be able to predict, because again, we still have Samura, Chihiro, and the Masumi that are waiting to appear. Now we have Azami, who has left everybody, Hikori and all of that, and Azami is now on his way to go fight Yora, because apparently Natsuki and Aruha are not going to be any match for the Shinichi's power that Yora has. It does seem that Yora is taking on some kind of burden by using this ability. I mean, for one, he doesn't even have the sword on his person. He's using the sword's abilities without it being present, which, I mean, if anything, I think just proves that the sword, the user, all of that is like all a hive mind. Maybe a hive mind isn't the correct word to use, but they all are one. They are not separate beings at this point. I truly believe that the Sword Saint, the Shinichi, all of that is one total power, and I think Yora being able to use abilities like Centipede without even holding the blade is just more proof of that. But definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments below, because I've got to tell you, this raid arc just keeps getting better and better, and it is sad that some of this chapter has been lost in translation of, you know, Hokuzono just not being able to truly finish it. But I think, you know, when the volume comes out, obviously most of these pages will be fixed, and I'm glad to see that the Kamunabi trader did get knocked the heck out. At least he was shut up very quickly. What is going to happen now? I honestly really couldn't even begin to tell you. Hokuto is still in play, and he has described the situation as it's time to get to work, because not for nothing, it's clear that this power that Yora is using is slowly beginning to cause him pain and injuries. So if Hokuto is gearing up into action, that probably means that they are going to have to fight at 150% because they're on a time limit now, or of some way, shape, or form. And if Yora fully plans to kill the Sword Saint, he probably wants to kill the Sword Saint while using this buff of power that he's getting. But of course, we know with the way the chapter ends, Azami is now standing in the Sword Saint's way. And even though the leader of the Kamunabi says that it's futile because Azami is going to be fighting against the power of the Shinichi, Ichiki has faith in his student that Azami will be able to stop Yora and the Hishaku. And Azami even fully feels confident in himself, because he tells Rokuhira from the grave that he'll finally be able to rest in peace as he puts a stop to this. And maybe this is why we didn't get the reveal of the full extent of Azami's sorcery when he was fighting Hokuto's puppet, because he was saving all of that epic grace and amazingness for this moment right here. So guys, let me know what you all think is going to happen in the next chapter. I am more than excited to see what happens, and hopefully Hokuzono is able to get some rest and put together a much more proper chapter with all the time he needs next week. But guys, definitely feel free to subscribe, but most importantly, don't be afraid to check out some of the other Kagurabachi content on the channel. I've got videos on how strong Chihiro is, videos on Sojo's entire story, and plenty of other series that you may read, like Sakamoto Days theories on Danadon. Don't be scared to check out the channel, as well as the main channel, because that has plenty of other content that you may enjoy. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.